The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare on the conference room filled with tense employees. I could feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on us, thick with anticipation and an unsettling energy. We were all gathered for what was supposed to be a routine all-hands meeting, but I sensed that something was off. The murmurs among my colleagues faded into a heavy silence as Mr. Thompson, our stern-faced CEO, took the stage, his presence commanding yet ominous. When he called out Mark's name, my heart sank. Mark had been a friend and a mentor, someone who always stood up for us. As Mr. Thompson announced his termination, the room erupted into a cacophony of disbelief. I caught glimpses of shocked faces, some mouths agape in horror, others tightened in silent fury. I felt my stomach twist in knots. This wasn't just a firing, it was a betrayal. I exchanged glances with Lily, my best friend, who sat across the table, her eyes wide as she processed the news. The collective gasp echoed in my ears, a sound that would haunt me long after the meeting ended. After the announcement, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Laughter, awkward and nervous, filled the air as people tried to mask their discomfort. "Did that really just happen?" someone whispered, their voice trembling. I could hardly respond, my mind racing with thoughts. How could this happen? The moment felt surreal, like a scene from a dystopian film rather than my workplace. I glanced around the room, seeing a mix of anger and confusion simmering beneath the surface. My hands trembled slightly, a physical manifestation of my internal chaos. As I left the conference room, the reality of what had transpired began to sink in. I could feel the weight of the decision I faced. Should I speak up in support of Mark or remain silent to protect my job? The fear of repercussions loomed large in my mind, battling against the loyalty I felt towards my colleague. A part of me wanted to rally the others, to create a wave of support for Mark, but another part was paralyzed by doubt. Would I be risking everything for someone who was already gone? My heart raced as I navigated through the hallways, each step heavy with uncertainty. The echoes of the meeting lingered in my thoughts, setting the stage for the turmoil that lay ahead. This was just the beginning, I realized. The reactions and discussions that would follow would shape not only my career but also the dynamics of our entire company. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, and I was caught in the middle of it all, grappling with the choice between safety and standing up for what was right. The fluorescent lights hummed above my desk, casting a harsh glow that only amplified the tension in the air. I could hear the muted buzz of conversations drifting from the break room, where laughter felt like a thin veneer over the anxiety that had settled in our corporate office. My fingers drummed nervously against the polished surface of my desk, each tap echoing my escalating unease. I was acutely aware of the unspoken words hanging between my colleagues and me, a tightrope walk between loyalty and fear. As I gathered my thoughts, I caught a glimpse of Lily, my best friend, leaning against the coffee machine with a furrowed brow. She was usually the one who could lighten the mood, but today her lips were pressed into a thin line. I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening. "What do you think they'll say about the meeting?" I asked, attempting to sound casual. She shrugged, her gaze flicking to the floor as if the tiles held the answers we both sought. "I don't know, Sarah. I just hope they understand the necessity behind the decisions. It's not personal, right?" Her voice wavered, betraying the uncertainty we both felt. I wondered if she could see through the facade I was trying to maintain, the one that screamed for normalcy, even as my heart raced at the thought of what had just transpired. The break room was filled with the scent of burnt coffee and the faint aroma of pastries, but all I could focus on was the undercurrent of tension. I tried to mask my anxiety with a smile as I stepped into the room, but the laughter that greeted me felt forced, as if everyone was tipping their hats to a tragedy they couldn't fully acknowledge. As I poured myself a cup of coffee, the mug trembled slightly in my hand, a physical manifestation of my inner turmoil. I glanced around, catching snippets of conversation. Words like unfairness and betrayal floated through the air, piercing my thoughts. The weight of the situation bore down on me, suffocating my attempts to focus on the mundane. How could I have underestimated the impact of my decisions? Just then, Alex walked in, his expression a mixture of concern and determination. He leaned close, lowering his voice. "You okay? You know you're not alone in this, right?" His reassurance was a balm, yet it also heightened my awareness of the stakes. I nodded, but inside, doubts swirled. What if my desire to support my friend led to repercussions for me and those around me? As we both stood there, surrounded by the chatter of my coworkers who were grappling with their own fears, I could feel the walls of the office tightening around me. I had to maintain my composure, but the brewing tension was palpable, and I knew that the normalcy we all craved was slipping away, inch by inch. The first confrontation with management loomed ahead, and I steeled myself for the inevitable clash, my heart racing as I prepared for what lay ahead. The air in the office hallway felt electric, thick with the tension that had erupted after the meeting. As I approached Mr. Thompson's office, my heart hammered in my chest, each beat echoing my determination to confront him about the injustice that had unfolded. I could smell the faint scent of burnt coffee wafting from the break room, an ironic reminder of the chaos brewing among us. My palms were clammy against the cool metal of the doorknob as I contemplated entering his domain, a space notorious for its oppressive atmosphere. Pushing the door open, I was hit by a wave of cold air, the fluorescent lights glaring down on Mr. Thompson as he hunched over his desk, seemingly unconcerned by the uproar outside. "Ah, Sarah. What can I do for you?" he asked, his tone dismissive, barely looking up from the papers scattered across his desk. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, anger bubbling just below the surface. It was as if he had already dismissed the gravity of the situation. "I need to talk to you about the firing of Mark. It was completely unjustified, and the way it was handled," I started, my voice shaking slightly as I tried to maintain my composure. The shadows in the room felt like they were closing in, suffocating my resolve. I had always been hesitant to confront authority, but this was different. "Mark was a liability, and you know it," Mr. Thompson interjected, his icy stare silencing me for a moment. I could see the arrogance etched on his face, the belief that he was untouchable. Memories of Mark's laughter, his supportive nature, and the countless times he had helped me during tight deadlines flooded my mind. How could he not see the value in that? But he was a dedicated employee. You can't just throw someone away like that, I argued, my voice rising in pitch with each word, the frustration spilling over. The walls of his office seemed to vibrate with the intensity of my conviction. I could feel my heart racing, the adrenaline coursing through me as I stood my ground. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "You think being dedicated matters in this corporate world? It's all about results, Sarah. You should know that by now. If you want to survive here, keep your head down and follow the rules." His words stung, igniting a fire within me. I wasn't just fighting for Mark, I was fighting for every employee who felt crushed under the weight of corporate indifference. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, willing the tremors in my hands to subside. "This isn't just about results, it's about respect and integrity. We can't let this culture of fear continue." He chuckled derisively, and I felt my stomach churn. The notion that he could belittle my concerns made my blood boil. "Respect, integrity, those are luxuries we can't afford in this business, Sarah. You're smart, but you need to get with the program." I stepped back, feeling the weight of his words pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The anger that had surged inside me now transformed into determination. I couldn't let this go. I needed to rally my colleagues, to show them that we were more than just cogs in the corporate machine. As I exited his office, I could hear the faint echoes of my coworkers' conversations, the tension palpable. In the team meeting room, I could see the faces of my colleagues, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and anger, mirroring my own feelings. The atmosphere was charged, a collective frustration boiling beneath the surface. I cleared my throat, ready to address them. "We need to talk about what just happened. Mark's firing isn't just a loss for him, it's a loss for all of us. We can't let this stand." The murmurs around the room grew louder, and the gravity of the moment settled heavily on my shoulders. I felt the weight of their expectations, the shared belief that we needed to act. I took a deep breath, channeling my inner strength, determined to ignite a spark of rebellion against the corporate indifference that had suffocated us for too long. The atmosphere in the office grew thick with tension as whispers of the firing spread like wildfire. Colleagues exchanged furtive glances, their faces a mix of disbelief and anger. I could feel the heaviness in the air, a palpable sense of unity slowly forming among my coworkers. It was as if the collective shock had ignited a spark, urging us to stand together against the injustice we had all witnessed. "We can't let this go unnoticed," Lily said, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled slightly. She had always been the one to rally us in difficult times, her passion infectious. I glanced around the break room where a small group had gathered, each person echoing her sentiment. "If we don't speak up now, we risk losing not just our friend but our integrity as a team." I felt a surge of determination rising within me. Memories of our last team-building retreat flooded my mind, the laughter shared over drinks, the late-night brainstorming sessions that had brought us closer. Now those bonds felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the fear of corporate repercussions. "But what if we lose our jobs?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the weight of uncertainty hanging in the air. "We have to weigh that against the cost of silence," Lily replied, her eyes fierce. I could see the fire in her gaze, a reflection of the unity we were beginning to forge. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Each heartbeat echoed my internal struggle, loyalty to our dismissed colleague versus the instinct to protect my own job. As we discussed our options, I could sense the resolve solidifying among us. The thought of taking a stand began to overshadow my fear. We were not just a group of employees, we were a community, and communities defend their own. I could feel the energy shift, the atmosphere crackling with a newfound purpose. "Let's organize a rally," someone suggested, their voice cutting through the tension. A murmured agreement spread through the room, and I felt a sense of belonging wash over me. There was power in numbers. We would gather to show our support, to stand in solidarity with our colleague, and to challenge the culture of fear that had taken root in our workplace. "We need to act quickly," I stated, my heart racing with both excitement and anxiety. "If we wait too long, it might be too late." The urgency in my voice seemed to galvanize the group further. As we began to plan, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. The fear was still there, lurking in the corners of my mind, but it was now overshadowed by the strength of our resolve. We were ready to face the consequences together, united by a shared conviction that we could no longer remain silent. This moment marked a turning point. We were willing to fight for what was right, to reclaim our dignity and our voice in a corporate landscape that had tried to silence us. The following days felt like a delicate dance, each step carefully measured as I navigated the tensions that had erupted in the office. The walls of my apartment, usually a sanctuary, seemed to close in on me as I sat at the kitchen table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the stale air of uncertainty. I could hear the distant sounds of the city outside, a reminder of the world moving on while I was stuck in this limbo of indecision and fear. Lily plopped down across from me, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. "So what's the plan? We can't just sit here and wait for the storm to pass, right?" Her hands fiddled with the edge of the table, a habitual gesture that mirrored my own internal turmoil. I admired her enthusiasm, yet a part of me felt the weight of responsibility pressing down like a heavy blanket. "I think we need to approach management for an open dialogue," I suggested, my voice wavering slightly. "We have to show them that we're not just employees, we're a team that cares about each other and our work. But how do we even start that conversation?" I felt the tension in my stomach tighten as I spoke, the fear of rejection gnawing at me. Memories of past confrontations flickered in my mind, each one a potential pitfall, a reminder of how easily things could go awry. Lily leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "What if we organized a meeting? A way for everyone to voice their concerns." Her suggestion hung in the air, filled with potential yet fraught with peril. The idea of gathering everyone together felt both empowering and frightening. What if the corporate machine crushed our efforts? "It's risky, but it might be our only shot to be heard," I replied, my heart racing at the thought. An image of our colleague's dismissal flashed in my mind, a stark reminder of what was at stake. I could still hear the echoes of disbelief from that fateful day. "We need to approach this delicately, though. I don't want anyone to get hurt again, least of all us." As we strategized, the weight of the corporate environment loomed over us, a dark cloud threatening to overshadow our plans. The coffee shop we often visited felt like a haven, yet even there the undercurrent of anxiety was palpable, the air thick with the scent of freshly baked pastries and brewing coffee. I watched as other patrons moved about, oblivious to the turmoil stirring just beneath the surface of our lives. In the back of my mind, I wrestled with the fear of failure. What if our efforts were in vain? What if Mr. Thompson dismissed us outright? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, and I could feel my palms beginning to sweat. But the flicker of hope Lily ignited within me pushed me to embrace the challenge. We owed it to ourselves and our dismissed friend to at least try. As we left the coffee shop, I could feel the weight of our decision pressing down on my shoulders. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a declaration of our resolve. We were ready to confront the corporate machine, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. I had to remind myself that, despite the fear, we were not alone. Together, we would face whatever came next, armed with the strength of our unity and a shared desire for change. The air in the office courtyard buzzed with a palpable tension that felt electric against my skin as we gathered, 53 of us, united in our decision to stand against the injustice we had witnessed. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that mirrored the uncertainty and fear swirling in my stomach. I could hear whispers of apprehension ripple through the crowd, punctuated by the soft rustling of paper as employees clutched homemade signs, their expressions a mix of determination and trepidation. This was it, the moment we had all been waiting for. I stood at the forefront, my heart pounding in rhythm with the anxious murmurings around me. Memories flooded my mind, reminding me of the camaraderie we had once shared, the laughter echoing through the halls now replaced with a heavy silence. I thought of Lisa, her fierce loyalty now ignited into action, and I felt a surge of pride swell within me. We were fighting not just for our dismissed colleague, but also for the soul of our company. As I cleared my throat, a hush fell over the crowd. My voice trembled slightly as I spoke. "We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions any longer. We have the power to demand respect and justice." the words poured out, fueled by the shared anger and frustration that had built over the past weeks. I could feel the heat of their gazes, the fire of their resolve igniting alongside mine. A fellow employee, Matt, stepped forward, his face flushed with conviction. "We've watched as our voices were silenced, our trust eroded. This ends with us." His passionate words resonated through the crowd, eliciting nods and murmurs of agreement. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me, a potent mixture of fear and hope. We were no longer just individuals. We were a collective force ready to challenge the oppressive corporate culture. As the rally continued, I could feel the stakes rising. My heart raced, each beat echoing the weight of our decision. The consequences were inevitable, and I wondered what would happen if we lost our jobs. Yet the thought of remaining silent felt far worse. This was a pivotal moment, a turning point where we would draw a line in the sand. We were ready to fight back, united in our cause, ready to face whatever came our way. The atmosphere crackled with determination, and I knew this was just the beginning of our journey toward reclaiming our dignity and integrity. The evening settled in as I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by crumpled papers and empty coffee cups that bore witness to the chaos of my thoughts. The soft glow of the table lamp illuminated the room, casting long shadows that danced like specters of my doubts. My heart raced as I considered the audacity it would take to confront management and demand accountability for their actions. I could almost hear the echoes of my colleagues' anger, the collective frustration that had ignited a fire within me. "We need a solid plan, Sarah," Lily said, her voice cutting through my reverie. She sat across from me, her brow furrowed with concern, yet her eyes sparkled with determination. "We can't just go in there guns blazing, it has to be strategic." Nodding, I chewed on my lower lip, the taste of uncertainty bitter on my tongue. "I know we have to outline our grievances clearly, but also present a constructive approach. Maybe we can suggest a new policy to ensure this doesn't happen again." The idea felt like a fragile flame, flickering but alive, and my pulse quickened at the thought of taking action. As I jotted down notes, memories of the rally flooded my mind, the faces of my colleagues united, their voices raised in defiance, a symphony of solidarity. I could picture the strength in numbers, the way we had banded together to support our dismissed colleague. "What if we leveraged that unity?" I proposed, my voice gaining strength. "We could draft a letter signed by everyone who attended the rally, demanding a meeting with Mr. Thompson. It shows we're serious." Lily's eyes widened in excitement, and she leaned forward, her enthusiasm infectious. "Yes, we can outline our demands clearly: accountability, transparency, and better communication. This isn't just about one incident, it's about changing the culture." As we strategized, I felt the weight of my previous indecision begin to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. Each point we discussed solidified our resolve, and the adrenaline coursing through me began to drown out the lingering fears of repercussions. I could visualize walking into that boardroom, the air thick with expectation, and standing tall as I faced Mr. Thompson. I would not be intimidated this time. This was about more than just me, it was about all of us. The plan was taking shape, and with every word we crafted, I felt my confidence rebuild. I was ready to confront the injustice we had endured, to fight for what was right, and reclaim our dignity as a team. This was no longer just a battle for one colleague, it was a stand against a culture of silence and compliance. I could feel it in my bones. This was the beginning of a movement, and I was determined to be at the forefront of it all. The boardroom was a battleground, the air thick with tension as I stood before the long, polished table, my colleagues arrayed before me like a jury ready to pass judgment. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare on the faces that had once been allies, now hardened by disbelief and anger. I could feel the weight of their scrutiny pressing down on me, a palpable force that threatened to crush my resolve. My hands trembled slightly at my sides, betraying the storm of emotions roiling within me. Taking a deep breath, I glanced at the documents spread out before me, my carefully crafted plan to address the fallout from the recent penalty. There was no turning back. I had to confront the reality of my decisions and their impact on our team. "Thank you all for being here today. I know this has been a difficult time for everyone, and I want to acknowledge the hurt and frustration that my choices have caused," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As I spoke, I could see the hard lines etched on their faces, the disbelief etched deeply into their expressions. I sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a flicker of hope mingling with the tension. I continued, "I want to propose a path forward, one that prioritizes our team's well-being and rebuilds the trust that has been broken. We need to work together to rectify the mistakes of the past and ensure our clients' needs are met without sacrificing our principles." The murmurs of discontent began to rise, voices overlapping in a chorus of doubt. "How can we trust you after this?" a voice called out from the back, laced with bitterness. I turned to face the source of the challenge, recognizing the pain in the voice of one of my strongest supporters turned adversaries. I understand your skepticism, and I accept full responsibility for my actions. I am asking for the chance to prove that I can lead us back to where we once stood, united and strong. This is not just about recovering from a financial penalty, it's about restoring our integrity as a team, I implored, my heart racing as I fought to connect with them. A silence fell over the room, and I could feel the collective breath being held. Memories of laughter and camaraderie flooded my mind, reminding me of the bond we had shared. I needed to rekindle that spirit, to remind them of the strength we held together. As I stood there, vulnerable yet determined, I saw a flicker of recognition in their eyes, a glimmer of the trust that had once been there. Let's not let this define us. Let's take this opportunity to rebuild, to collaborate openly, and to ensure that every voice is heard moving forward, I concluded, my voice rising with conviction. The tension in the room seemed to waver, the walls of resistance slowly beginning to crack. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing the urgency of my message. Would they rally behind me, or would I be left standing alone in the aftermath of my choices? As the murmurs shifted to quiet discussions, I took a step back, allowing the weight of my words to settle. I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey toward redemption, but I was ready to face whatever came next. My fight for justice had only just begun, and I was determined to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The room buzzed with tentative hope, and as I looked around at my colleagues, I felt a sense of catharsis wash over me. Perhaps together, we could forge a path forward that honored our shared values and restored the integrity that had been lost. The air in the office felt charged with a mixture of relief and uncertainty as I walked through the familiar corridors, each step echoing the hope that had ignited during the rally. My colleagues, once divided by doubt and resentment, now shared a collective sense of purpose, their faces illuminated by a newfound camaraderie. I could still hear the chant of support reverberating in my mind, a testament to our unity against the corporate machine that had almost crushed our spirits. As I settled into my workspace, the comforting scent of fresh coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the faint notes of printer ink and paper. I took a moment to breathe deeply, the aroma grounding me as I reflected on the events of the past few days. The rally had been more than just a show of solidarity. It was a turning point, a declaration that we would no longer be passive participants in our own narratives. I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me, a spark that had been missing for far too long. In the aftermath of our collective stand, the atmosphere in the office had shifted. Conversations that had once been laced with tension were now infused with a sense of collaboration. I had spent the previous evening drafting a proposal for our management team, outlining not just how to address the financial penalties we faced, but also how to rebuild trust within our ranks. As I typed, I envisioned the faces of my colleagues, their eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and cautious optimism. I understood that regaining their trust would be a gradual process, but I was determined to lead with transparency and integrity. That morning, as I gathered with my team for our first meeting post-rally, I could see the hesitation in their expressions. I knew I had a long road ahead, but the flicker of determination in their eyes mirrored my own. I spoke earnestly, acknowledging the pain caused by my previous decisions and emphasizing our shared goals moving forward. Each nod, each small smile from my colleagues felt like a step toward healing, a reminder that we were in this together. The conversations flowed freely, ideas bouncing around the room like sparks igniting a fire. I could see the passion returning to my colleagues' faces, the energy shifting from despair to hope. We discussed ways to engage with our clients, to rebuild relationships that had been strained by my earlier choices. With every suggestion, I felt the weight of guilt begin to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. As the meeting concluded, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We were not out of the woods yet, challenges still lay ahead, and I knew that old wounds would take time to heal. But in that moment, I felt the warmth of a rekindled spirit among us. The journey toward redemption had begun, and while the path was fraught with uncertainty, I was ready to face it with my team by my side. Together, we would forge a new chapter, one built on trust, resilience, and the unwavering belief that our collective strength could overcome any obstacle. The office was transformed, a vibrant tapestry of camaraderie woven together by the shared experience of standing up against injustice. I could hear the laughter of my colleagues mingling with the clinking of coffee cups, filling the air with a sense of renewal and hope. The once sterile environment now buzzed with life, each corner alive with conversations about our future, our vision, and how we could foster a workplace built on trust and integrity. I felt a warmth spread through me, a stark contrast to the cold isolation I had once felt. As I stood at the center of the gathering, I caught sight of familiar faces, some still cautious, others radiating optimism. Lisa approached me, her smile a beacon of reconciliation. "We did it, Sarah, we actually did it," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I smiled back, feeling the weight of our shared struggle lift slightly. It was a reminder of the strength we had discovered in unity, a lesson learned through pain and perseverance. In that moment, I realized that our journey had only just begun. There would be challenges ahead, but we were armed with the knowledge that we could overcome them together. I took a deep breath, the air rich with the aroma of fresh pastries and strong coffee, and I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. My heart swelled with gratitude for the support I had received, and I knew I had a responsibility to ensure this momentum didn't fade. As I prepared to share my thoughts with the team, the atmosphere shifted from uncertainty to enthusiasm. I spoke passionately about our commitment to creating an inclusive environment, one where every voice mattered. I encouraged everyone to participate actively in shaping our future, to speak up when they felt unheard, and to challenge the status quo. The energy in the room was palpable, a testament to our collective resolve. Reflecting on the journey we had taken, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. The lessons learned would guide us as we navigated this new chapter. I was determined to lead with empathy, to prioritize the well-being of my team, and to cultivate a culture of transparency. This experience had ignited a fire within me, a commitment to not only be a leader but also an advocate for change. As I wrapped up my speech, I felt a surge of motivation ripple through the crowd. The faces around me were no longer shadows of distrust but bright beacons of possibility. I concluded with a call to action, reminding everyone of the importance of staying engaged and connected. Let's keep this momentum going, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell.